Good evening. Tonight's Firefly time will be slightly different. Tonight I will be reading part of a short horror story from the book Great Horror Stories, 101 Chilling Tales. Tonight I will be reading the first half of The Soul That Would Not Be Born by Dion Fortune. Contrary to his usual custom, Taverner did not insist on seeing his patient alone, for the sufficient reason that no information could be extracted from her. It was to the mother, a Mrs. Callie, we turned for the case history, and she, a poor, anxious woman, gave us such scanty details as an onlooker might observe, but of the viewpoint and feelings of the patient we learnt for nothing, for there was nothing to learn. She sat before us in the big leather armchair. Her body was a tenement for the soul of a princess, but it was, alas, untenanted. The fine, dark eyes, utterly expressionless, looked into space while we discussed her as if she had been an inanimate object, which practically she was. She was never like ordinary children, said the mother. When they put her in my arms after she was born, she looked up at me with the most extraordinary expression in her eyes. They were not a baby's eyes at all, doctor. They were the eyes of a woman, and an experienced woman, too. She didn't cry, she never made a sound, but she looked as if she had had all the troubles of the world upon her shoulders. That baby's face was a tragedy. Perhaps she knew what was coming. Perhaps she did, said Taverner. In a few hours, however, continued the mother, she looked quite like an ordinary baby, but from that time to this she has never changed, except in her body. We looked at the girl in the chair. She gazed back at us with the unblinking solidity of a very young infant. We have taken her to everybody we could hear of, but they all say the same. That is a hopeless case of mental deficiency. But when we heard of you, we thought you might say something different. We knew that your methods were not like that of most doctors. It does seem strange that it should be impossible to do anything for her. We passed some children playing in the street as we came here in the car. Bonny, bright little things, but in such rags and dirt. Why is it that those whose mothers can do so little for them should be so splendid, and Mona, for whom we would do anything, should be as she is? The poor woman's eyes filled with tears, and neither Taverner nor I could reply. I will take her down to my nursing home, and keep her under observation for the time, if you wish, said Taverner. If the brain is at fault, I can do nothing. But if it is the mind itself that has failed to develop, I might attempt the cure. These deficiencies cases are so inaccessible. It is like ringing up on the telephone when the subscriber will not answer. If one could attract her attention, something might be done. The crux of the matter lies in the establishment of communications. When they had gone, I turned to Taverner and said, "What hope have you in dealing with a case like that?" "I cannot tell you just yet," he replied. "I shall have to find out what her previous incarnations have been. I invariably find that congenital troubles originate from a former life. Then I shall have to work out her horoscope and see what the other conditions are ripe for the paying off of whatever debt she may have incurred in a previous life. Do you still think I am a queer sort of charlatan? Or are you beginning to get used to my ways?" "I have long ceased to be astonished by anything," I replied. "I should accept the devil, horns, hoofs, and tail, if you undertook to prescribe for him." Taverner chuckled. "With regard to our present case, I am of the opinion that we shall find the law of reincarnation is the one we shall have to look to. Now tell me this, Rhodes. Supposing reincarnation is not a fact, supposing this life is the beginning and the end of our existences, and in its conclusion we proceed to flames or harps and according to the use we have made of it, how do you account for Mona Cayley's condition?" What did she do in the few hours between her birth and the onset of her disease to bring down such judgment on herself? And at the end of her life, can she justly be said to have deserved hell or earned heaven? I don't know, said I. But supposing my theory is right, then if we can recover the record of her past, we shall be able to find the cause of her present condition. And having found the cause, we may be able to remedy it. At any rate, let us try. Would you like to see how I recover the records? I use various methods. Sometimes I get them by hypnotizing patients, or by crystal gazing. Sometimes I read them from the subconscious mind of nature. You know, we believe that every thought and impulse in the world is recorded in the Akashic records. It is like consulting a reference library. I am going to use the latter method in the present case. In a few moments, by methods known to himself, Taverner had shut out all outward impressions from his mind, and was concentrated on the inner vision. Confused mental pictures evidently danced before his eyes. Then he got the focus, and began to describe what he saw while I took down notes. Egyptian and Grecian lives were dismissed with a few words. These were not what he sought. He was merely working his way down through the ages. But I gathered that we were dealing with a soul of an ancient lineage and great opportunities. Life after life we heard the tale of royal birth or intonation into the priesthood. And yet, in its present life, the girl's soul was cut off from all communication with its physical vehicle. I wondered what abuse of opportunity had led to such a sentence of solitary confinement in the cell of its body. Then we came to the level we sought, Italy in the 15th century, as it turned out. Daughter of the reigning duke. I could not catch the name of his principality. Her younger sister was beloved by Giovanni Sigmundi. She contrived to win the affections of her sister's lover, and then a rich suitor offering for her own hand, she betrayed Sigmundi to his enemies. A true daughter of the Renaissance, said Taverner when he had returned to normal consciousness and read my notes, for he seldom retained any memory of what had transpired during his subconscious states. Now I think we can guess the cause of the trouble. I wonder whether you're aware of the mental processes that precede birth. Just before birth, the soul receives a cinematograph, film, as it were, of its future life. Not all the details, but the broad outlines, which are determined by its fate. These things it cannot alter, but according to its reaction to them, so its future lives will be planned. Thus it is that although we cannot alter our fate in this life, our future lies entirely within our own hands. Now that we know the record, we can guess what manner of fate lies upon this girl. She owes a life debt to a man and a woman. The suffering she caused recoils upon her. There is no need for a specialized hell. Each soul builds its own. But she is not suffering, I said. She is merely in a passive condition. The only one who suffers is the mother. Ah, said Taverner, therein lies the crux of the whole matter. When she had that brief glimpse of what lay before her, she rebelled against her fate, and tried to repudiate her debt. Her soul refused to take up the heavy burden. It was this momentary flash of knowledge which gave her the eyes of a strange, unchildlike look, which so startled her mother. Do people always have this foreknowledge? I asked. They always have that glimpse, but its memory usually lies dormant. Some people have vague premonitions, however, and occult training tends to recover these lost memories, together with others belonging to previous lives. Having found the cause of Miss Callie's trouble, what can you do to cure her? Very little, said Taverner. I can only wait and watch her. When the time is ripe for the settlement of the balance, the other actors in the old tragedy will come along and unconsciously claim the payment of their debt. And thus concludes Part 1. Please join me next week for Part 2 of The Soul That Would Not Be Born.